This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. That's Matthew 5:10-12. Those are the words of Jesus. Guys, kind of a somber episode today, but we don't have a somber start to the episode because we have not given away a knife in a very, very long time. And yet, here we go. We're giving away a knife, guys. Half-face blades. If you guys are not familiar with half-face blades out of California, they are a fantastic, fantastic knife company. They have graciously donated us a one-of-one knife. This is one of their boogeyman knives, okay? And it's going to go to one lucky supporter of Undaunted Life. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'm actually showing it off here on the screen. But here's the skinny on this knife. It retails for $700. It's got the half-face blades logo on one side, which you will not be able to see probably here on YouTube, but that is their famous half-face blades logo on one side. But on the other side of the blade, it's got the Undaunted logo. So half the Undaunted logo. I'll see if I can get that close to the camera. Okay, so boom, there you go. That's the Undaunted logo. And on the other side, the half-face blades logo. Oh, just came out of... Okay. Yeah, I think you guys get the point. But it's 8.5 inches overall. It's a 4.5-inch blade. It's S45 VN American steel. It is a ram horn handle. So guys, check that out. And then the blade is armor black Cerakote. And it's got a suede-lined black Kydex sheath that I just dropped on the floor. Here we go, successfully retrieved, going back into that sheath. So here's the skinny on the raffle, because we've done other giveaways before, but here's the skinny on the raffle. Any person that donates $25 through our donation website between right now, and March 25th, okay, it's March 25th, now and March 25th, and puts the word knife, very important, you have to put the word knife in the message section, okay, the message section is right there. You will automatically have your name entered into the randomized drawing for the knife. So guys, every $25 you donate equals one spot in the raffle. So obviously, if you donate $100, your name will go into the randomizer 4 times. If you donate $1,000, your name goes into the randomizer 40 times, so on and so forth. If you've been listening to our show for any length of time, that's how we've always done it. But we've got something extra special, okay? Because some of you guys like guarantees, okay? So you want to be able to win, you want the chance to win, but you also want a guarantee. So this is what we're doing, half-face blades, okay? For every $1,000 that you donate to this raffle, Half-Face Blades is going to send you an Undaunted Life branded fixed blade knife, and you will still have a chance to win the raffle knife. Okay, I mean, I don't know what else I could do for you guys, but that's a hell of a deal, okay? So the thing is like for every $1,000 you donate, so if you donate $1,000, you will get an Undaunted Life fixed blade from Half-Face Blades, and you will still be entered into the raffle. If you get $5,000, guys, your name will go into the randomizer 200 times, and you will still get 5 Undaunted Life half-face blades. So guys, it is an incredible thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a video of us doing the randomizer. We're going to post that on our Instagram, and we're going to announce our winner on the show on March the 27th. And just so you guys know, a portion of the proceeds will go to support the local pregnancy resource center here in my town, the Hope Pregnancy Center of Edmond, Oklahoma. So guys, it's going to support us, Undaunted Life, and all the things that it takes to pull off stuff like this, all the electricity and all the different things and the editors and everything else. But we also want to support babies in our community and make sure that they can come to fruition outside of the womb. So guys, Undaunted.Life/donate. It's in the show notes. You can go to our website. It's right up there in the top right. If you're on our email list, you will get a link to everything here, but Undaunted.Life/donate. And also wanted to remind you that we still have the Church of 1122 Men's Conference that's coming up this October 17th and 18th. Yours truly will be speaking along with Brian Laritz, John Tyson, the one and only Willie Robertson, and the man, Joby Martin. So guys, get your tickets. This will sell out. I've gotten an update. More than half the tickets have already been sold. Jacksonville, Florida, October 17th and 18th. Check out the show notes. Again, thank you as always to our donors. And guys, if you've not left a review for this show, a 5-star review, or shared this with a friend, please go ahead and do so. Now, today on the Quick Hitters, we're going to be covering Hamas and Palestinian civilians throwing a party to celebrate the return to Israel of the murdered and mutilated bodies of a mother and her 2 young children. All U.S. Senate Democrats voting against a bill that would keep males from competing in female sports. A narcissistic gay couple having trouble getting their designer babies back to the U.K. A public school psychology teacher in Waurika, Oklahoma, making their students fill out a survey about their thoughts on different sex acts. And the colossal idiocy of former pastor Rick Warren. But I just got to tell you a little bit about this episode. So what I try to do is I try to get ahead. I'm always trying to work ahead. And so as I was looking to this Thursday's episode, I was writing it a week ago. And I'm like, okay, here's some of the quick hitters that I want to do. But the story that I wanted to talk about is something that I've wanted to talk about since February. But then everything started to pop off in Syria. And I announced online on our social media that I was going to be getting into a lot of different subjects. But I want to go and talk about what I initially wanted to talk about, which were the 70 beheaded Christians in Congo. Okay. And so the thing about this story is it's been, I guess you could call it criminally underreported, okay? Because I would venture to guess that many of you were shocked just now when I talked about the 70 people in Congo, the 70 Christians in the Congo that were beheaded because they were Christians, okay? A lot of you didn't hear about that because it wasn't really covered anywhere in the mainstream media. So I want to go to a report from Open Doors from February the 25th, and they have sources on the ground in the Congo, and they broke this horrific story, and I'll put the link in the show notes. 70 Christians have been found beheaded in a church in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that's DRC, in what's the latest devastating attack on believers in the northeast of the country. According to field sources, around 4 a.m. last Thursday, that's February the 13th, suspected militants from the Allied Democratic Forces, the ADF, a group with ties to the so-called Islamic State, approached homes in Maiba in the territory of Libero saying, get out, and don't make any noise. 20 Christian men and women came out and were captured. Shaken by this incident, people from the local community in Maibar later gathered to work out how to release those held captive. However, ADF militants surrounded the village and captured a further 50 believers. All 70 of those kidnapped were taken to a Protestant church in Kasanga, where they were tragically killed. Field sources report that until yesterday, which was Tuesday the 18th of February, some families have not been able to bury their dead because of the insecurity in the area. Many Christians have now fled the area for their safety. This was not just an act of terror. It was a targeted massacre of Christians, and it will not stop here, says Ilya Djadi, senior analyst for freedom of religion or belief in sub-Saharan Africa for Open Doors. The ADF is part of a growing extremist network that wants to wipe out Christianity in the region. If nothing is done, more attacks will follow. And so this story is just on the heels of every other story we've talked about on this show of, the downstream actions of the so-called religion of peace, right? And so obviously this is a horrific story, but it's unfortunately not an uncommon one in the current day and age that we're living in. So there's an organization called Aid to the Church in Need. It's a Catholic organization that helps persecuted Christians all over the globe. And what they do is they periodically release a report that gives the rest of the world an idea of what's going on, okay? So their last report that they released was in June 22nd of 2023. So I'll link to it in the show notes so you guys can read it all for yourself. But here are some of the highlights, or I guess you call them lowlights, if you will. There are more than 387 million Christians living in countries where religious freedom does not exist or is outright attacked. So that's about 15% of the world's Christians. About 1 in 7 Christians may suffer from a form of real persecution, and this organization defines persecution in the following way: mistreatment, discrimination, oppression, or violence directed towards an individual or communities who identify as Christians or follow the Christian faith. It involves the infringement of their basic human rights, such as the freedom of worship, expression, and assembly due to their religious beliefs and practices. Most of the persecution comes from 3 main sources. 1, authoritarian governments, that's 49 countries. 2, Islamic fundamentalists, that's 21 countries. And 3, ethno-religious nationalists, 4 countries. Africa's most violent continent against Christians because of the adherence to fundamentalist Islam. Some claim that Christians are in worse conditions now in the Middle East than during the ISIS occupation. In Sri Lanka and India, Christians and their places of worship are attacked with impunity. In Pakistan, Christians are routinely harassed, and growing numbers of young Christian girls are kidnapped, forcibly married to a Muslim, and converted to Islam. They are often raped as well. Punishment for these crimes often takes years, if it ever comes, as authorities in Pakistan are often apathetic to crimes against Christians. In North Korea, Christians are either killed or held in labor camps. In China, restrictions on public worship and internet are very harmful to Christians. Churches are monitored and sometimes forcibly closed. Plus, it is illegal for anyone under 18 to attend church services. Many Christians have been arrested and sentenced for unclear reasons. They are often charged with fraud or creating trouble. Again, you can go to the link in the show notes for the episode to view the entire report, but it's very, very sobering. And again, I was reading from the report for much of that if I forgot to say quote unquote or whatever. But that's where I was going to start my overall commentary. And then last Friday, everything seemed to start popping off in the country of Syria. So by Saturday, it was pretty clear that even though it was kind of hard to get an accurate report from the ground, that there was an active, targeted genocide of minorities in Syria. Okay. Now, I have a handful of sources that go all the way to the grounds of Syria and all the way up to the White House. And as of the recording of this, so I'm recording this Tuesday night, okay? So you guys are listening to this on time, you're listening to this on Thursday. There's not a whole lot of super reliable intel at the moment in terms of regions where certain things are happening, in terms of actual numbers. The situation in Syria is very, very complicated. It's been complicated, and you can take that all the way back to the Old Testament. It's been a very, very complicated area. And so I wanted to be able to give you guys some actual numbers, but according to my sources on the ground, people that are saying that thousands of religious minorities, to include Christians, are being slaughtered, that's not quite accurate right now, but it is certainly hundreds, which is absolutely horrific, right? Every single one of those people being slaughtered right now, it's an absolute horrific tragedy. But this is going to continue to unfold. So I'm going to be continuing to follow this story and giving you guys updates. But I did want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a brief history, and I'm taking a little bit of a risk here, because anytime you go into a history of a very, very rough part of the world with a lot of different influences, I can seem like I'm flying too high over a situation, but I do want to kind of give y'all a little bit of a sense, because most of us aren't following Syrian history. But Bashar al-Assad, he ruled Syria for almost 24 years, okay? So he ruled from July of the year 2000 until December, okay? December of 2024. So he took power after the death of his father, Hafez al-Assad, who ruled Syria for 29 years. So Assad, father-son, has been ruling Syria since 1971 until just this past December, okay? Now, Assad, the son, Assad, Bashar al-Assad, he's a horrible, evil, terrible person, okay? So during the Syrian civil war, which was, 2011 to 2024, we know for a fact that he used chemical weapons on his own people. That was the supposed red line that Obama had for him, and then he basically sat there like a feckless turd and did nothing. And then Assad carried out mass killings that deliberately targeted non-combatant civilians, which included children. He commanded the torture and execution of his opponents. He used siege warfare and basically starvation tactics to cause civilians to submit in certain areas of Syria. And this led to roughly half of the Syrian population to flee and become refugees. So that's like 14 million people, okay? So his regime was overthrown in December of 2024 by the opposition forces. So the main opposition force was Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, that's HTS for short. So those are Sunni Muslims, which is a Turkish-backed Syrian national army. Okay, I know this is going to get a little bit convoluted, but, just try to stick with me. So HTS was founded by Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. His real name is Ahmed Hussein al-Shara. So HTS evolved out of Jabhat al-Nusra, which was formerly a part of al-Qaeda in Syria. Okay, so they quickly captured, whenever they came in, they quickly captured a bunch of very key Syrian cities, and they ended up encircling Damascus, where Assad was. And this caused Assad to flee Syria and to go to Russia for asylum, and they were more than happy to take him because they had been backing him the entire time. So this led to the rise of Ahmed al-Shara. He's the jihadist leader of HTS, to become Syria's president. And the thing is when this happened, okay, when there was a regime change in December, there were a lot of people, including Tulsi Gabbard on the Hill during her confirmation hearings, that said, look, guys, it's about to get really, really bloody, okay? Really bloody. Because even though Assad, and this is going to sound like, oh my gosh, he's pro-Assad, just stick with me here, because I got to call balls and strikes here. Assad was a horrible, awful, terrible, evil man, but there was relative order with certain groups. So it wasn't like he was protecting the Christians in that country by, having tanks in front of their houses so that they couldn't be, executed by Islamic jihadists. But there was order enough to where the Islamic jihadists didn't try it as much as they would have wanted to. Okay. And so that's not me saying that I wish Assad was back in and not these HTS guys, because guys, it's the difference between having a diarrhea sandwich on white and a diarrhea sandwich on wheat, right? That's basically what we're looking at. It's terrible no matter what. And that's essentially what you get in the Middle East is, it's not always the lesser of two evils. It's just which evil are we going to choose, right? But on last Friday, so that's the 7th of March, we started seeing reports of mass killings of multiple groups of people in Syria. So we heard about the Druze. So that's a religious and ethnic minority. That's an offshoot of Ismaili Islam, and they make up about 3 to 4% of Syria's population, so that's about 700,000 people. So they're primarily concentrated near the border with Jordan. So we saw some reports that they were being executed. Then we have the Alawites, and so that's a Shia group, but some Shia scholars even don't consider them to be legit Muslims, but we don't really have time to get into that today. But they're about 10 to 15% of the Syrian population, so that's 2 to 3 million people. They're mainly concentrated on the coastal mountains. So Assad and his, both father and son Assad, they were Alawites, and the Assad regime elevated a lot of Alawites to high office, which created a lot of issues, a lot of jealousy within the country, a lot of angst, and many of those people are being murdered now because of retribution with the new party that's in power. Okay. Then we have the Kurds. So the Kurds are one of, if not the largest stateless group in the world. So that's about 10 to 15% of the Syrian population, about 2 to 3 million people. And they've wanted their own land for, a long, long time, Kurdistan, if you will, which has led to conflict for them in a lot of countries. So Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Syria. But during the Syrian civil war, they took advantage of the chaos to kind of carve out their own territory in northeastern Syria. But the new Sunni government has marginalized the Kurds, and they've targeted a lot of them for destruction. So has another country, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then we have the Christians. So 5 to 10% of Syria, their population is Christian, so that's 1 to 2 million people. But there's a lot of different sects of Christianity in Syria. So there's Syriac, Orthodox and Catholic, there's Greek Orthodox and Catholics, there's Maronite, there's Evangelical, there's Protestants, kind of all over the place. But under Assad, the Christians were, again, it'd be rough to call them protected, but they were certainly tolerated, okay? They weren't targeted in the way that they're being targeted now. So Assad's government was more secular as opposed to Islamist, and so they didn't really care. They weren't targeting Christians because they had to get rid of the infidel, which is exactly what Islam teaches. But during the Civil War, Christians were targeted by ISIS and other jihadist groups. Christians were kind of caught in between. Hey, do we support Assad or do we support the rebels? Because some Christians actually aligned with the Kurds, so it was just kind of a mess for the Christians. But many of the Christians during the Civil War fled to North America, to Europe, to Lebanon, other places. And what we've seen, again, it's hard to know for certain. It's hard to know for sure. We don't really have numbers. But it seems like all those groups that are now minorities in Syria, they are being targeted. There are reports on the ground. Again, I'm trying to get full substantiation of entire Christian families being slaughtered, entire Christian congregations being slaughtered. Some people are like, well, hey, this isn't really like this is more sectarian violence. This isn't really violence from Muslims towards Christians because they're apostates. But that's precisely what this is. They're taking advantage, HTS is taking advantage of this change in power to eradicate groups that they think need to be eradicated. Okay. And there are a few other things that I did want to share. And, I had to really be careful with some of the information I've been getting to not violate any off-the-record confidence in my sources. But here are some things that have either come to fruition by the time you're listening to this or likely will come to fruition. The Turks are likely to enter this conflict to target the Kurds specifically for destruction, so be watching for that. Assad is not just going to go chill in Russia for the rest of his life. It seems like he's wanting to come back into power and is still backed by Russia and likely Iran as well. There's been a lot of reports, pro-Russia reports, showing that there are Christians that have fled to Syria that are they're being protected on a Russian military base in that area. This is not because of just an overwhelming amount of altruism from the Russians. This is strategic. Again, they do want Assad back in power. This next one probably has the biggest ramifications for the rest of the world, is that war between Turkey and Israel seems to be imminent. Okay. Turkey is a NATO nation. Israel is not, but we are allied with Israel. That's obviously a big problem. I was in Turkey just over 10 years ago, and it wasn't an Islamist nation. It was a Muslim nation, but not an Islamist nation, but it's certainly an Islamist nation now. Also, the minority killings that I've just described to you, they will very likely continue and likely get worse. But I do have a message from a source that it has, sources on the ground there in Syria. So I'll read it here. What I know on Christians from a trusted source is that from day one, Christian civilians have taken arms and weapons to defend their houses and neighborhoods. Daytime they work, nighttime they watch, and they take shifts. So obviously, if you've listened to my show for any length of time, or even the Daily Blade, or both, I'm obsessed with the book of Nehemiah in the Old Testament. If you go through the first 4 chapters, that's what we see. We see, in chapter 4 specifically, we see men that were working to rebuild the walls, right? And they had their tools in one hand and they had their fighting weapons in the other, right? And so it seems like that's currently what's happening in Syria with a lot of the Christians there. They're taking on what, Nehemiah had done. So what all of this begs is the question, hence, the title of today's episode. So what happens when Christians are slaughtered by Muslims? And there's two things that happen mainly. One is that people basically don't talk about it. That's one thing that happens because, Al Mohler basically hasn't, I don't think he's mentioned it yet this week, the great Al Mohler. A lot of other Christian and conservative podcasters, if they've mentioned it, they've just mentioned it a little bit, right? And I don't know if it's because they're waiting on more sourcing or things like that. But yeah, you have a lot of people that aren't talking about it. And the second thing is people are defaulting to prayer. And in a lot of moments like this, unless you're grabbing all your weaponry and going over to Syria and trying to push back on the darkness that's happening, that's kind of what we're left with, okay? And so I don't want to see anyone, certainly Christians, denigrating the power of prayer here. Joby stopped his sermon on Sunday to basically say, hey, we need to pray for the Christians that are being persecuted all over the globe, right? Because this isn't just in Congo and in Syria. This is in Nigeria. It's been happening in places all over the globe. And as a quick side note, to anyone that's offended at how I'm framing this so far, if they're offended by, the name of this episode and all that, like, hey man, why do you have to single out Muslims? Why can't you just say Christians are being slaughtered? It's not like, all Muslims are like that. Well, allow me to enlighten you real quick. The people that are being slaughtered because they are Christians. So these Christians in Congo, for instance, they were kidnapped because they were Christians, and they were beheaded because of their faith in Christ. And they are being slaughtered by Muslims because they are Muslims. Because again, as I've talked about recently, and I've talked about a lot on the show, there's no such thing as Muslim extremism. It's fundamentalist Islam. Okay, the least abrogated surahs of the Quran are the bloodiest. Those are the ones that call for the killing of the infidel. So these groups that we've talked about, HTS or Al-Qaeda or Boko Haram or ISIS or any of these groups, they're doing precisely what the Prophet Muhammad wants them and has wanted them to do. But I do have some points that I'd like to make in light of the news of, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in different parts of Africa and the rest of the Middle East, and the stuff that we saw in that report. One is that Jesus warned us that we would be hated and that we would be killed. Okay, let's go to his words in Matthew 24, verse 9. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Okay, so not just for no reason, but for his name's sake. And also Jesus warned us that we would experience governmental and religious persecution. So Mark 13, verse 9, this is Jesus again. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to the councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before them. Not to go before them and to cower, to fall to pieces, to say, oh, I didn't really mean it, but to witness, to bear witness of Jesus before them. And also, let's just go back to the scripture from the top of the show, the words of Jesus that we see in Matthew 5, starting in verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. But also in light of that, guys, we have to remember what we see in Romans 12, okay? Romans 12, verse 15. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. So we can know that we win in the end, but that might be cold comfort to someone right now who watched their family members be beheaded or raped and then set on fire or buried alive or just shot indiscriminately. It might be cold comfort, but it's true nonetheless. But our job as Christians over here in America, where persecution is like, oh, someone didn't like my Facebook post because I posted a scripture, or they kind of made fun of me at work. That's our level of persecution, right? We have to rejoice with those who rejoice, and we have to weep with those who weep. And right now, we need the weeping, okay? We need to weep with those who weep. But we also need to be reminded that God is still in control. As chaotic as things seem, and I heard someone say the other day, the world's never been this crazy. I was like, bro, read any history book, right, that had to do with warfare. The world has always been crazy. We just never had social media before 14 seconds ago. But if we go to Revelation 20, verses 4 through 6, I want to read this here. Then I saw thrones, and seated on them were those to whom the authority to judge was committed. Also I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is the one who shares in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. And the thing about it is, what comes right after that in the book of Revelation, starting in verse 7, is the final and complete defeat of Satan. So I'll read that here. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. And they marched up over the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and his false prophets were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So, guys, we win in the end. And things are getting real nasty. Okay, I don't know if you've ever kind of seen stuff like this before, but, there's a lot of mythology and there's a lot of interest in the four horsemen of the apocalypse as we see in Revelation. And so there's a white horse, a black horse, a red horse, and a pale horse. And most people think pale means opaque, gray, but it's pale like green, like faded lima bean green, okay? And so it's green, white, red, and black. Every Muslim nation on the planet, what is their flag? What are their flag colors? It's that. There is a final battle that's coming. Guys, it's going to happen. Will it happen soon? No one knows. Will it happen in our lifetimes? We don't really know, but it is coming, and we need to prepare ourselves for that. We prepare ourselves by, having the daily blade, by having the sword of the Spirit as part of our repertoire. Evangelism. Welcoming people to the saving grace of the gospel, to the truth of the gospel, but also supporting those that are in need. And so again, I'm going to keep my thumb on the pulse of this story. And as I get legitimate knowledge of what we can do to best support the Christians in Syria, I will be sure to bring you guys all that information so that we can help them push back darkness. Hey guys, real quick. I know a lot of you guys are really doing everything you can to have a consistent workout routine, but the problem is you work out at a Globo gym. And so there's 17 guys on the bench that you need, and there's people doing bicep curls on the squat rack. And the biggest problem is not your schedule. It's actually where you're trying to get your work in. How about you guys stop making excuses and build yourself a home gym? And when you do, make sure you use Sorinex. So Sorinex is a family-owned and operated business that builds some of the most impressive workout facilities in the entire world. They built gyms for teams in the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and even the UFC. They've also built gyms for some of the biggest and most successful collegiate and high school athletic programs in the country. But in addition to that, they make the highest quality home gym products that I've ever seen on the market. In my personal home gym, I have the Sorinex Outfitter Rack, the heavy version in military green. Also, I have some of their center mass bells. I've got their Nordic glute ham developer and their patented landmine attached to my rack. So guys, stop fighting the riffraff at your local gym or bench or squat rack or whatever. And if you're going to build out a home gym, you may as well get one that will last you and one that you could even pass down to your kids. Begin your build out by going to Sorinex.com. That is Sorinex.com, Sorinex.com. Take control of where and when you work out, Sorinex.com. So let's get into the quick hitters. Here's another story from the world of peaceful Islam, but Hamas and Palestinian civilians, quote unquote, throwing a party to celebrate the return to Israel of the murdered and mutilated bodies of a mother and her two children. So this is according to the Jerusalem Post on February the 21st. Official identification has linked the remains of two of the slain Israeli hostages returned to Israel on Thursday from captivity as belonging to Kafir and Ariel Bibas, the IDF confirmed early Friday morning alongside a report on forensic findings of the case. Available intelligence and forensic evidence from the identification process have led officials to determine that the two children were brutally murdered in captivity by Gaza terrorists in November 2023, just a month after their abduction, and they were not killed by an IAF strike as Hamas originally claimed. The two boys were aged 9 months and 4 years old, respectively, at the time of their abduction on October 7, 2023. The bodies were identified using forensic analysis in the interdepartmental collaboration between the National Institute of Forensic Medicine and the Israeli police. Kfir Bibas was murdered at 10 months old, and Ariel was murdered at 4 years old. The children were abducted from their home in Kibbutz near Oz alongside their father Yarden and their mother Shiri. While the boy's father, Yarden Bibas, was released as part of the hostage return agreement on February the 1st of 2025, Shiri's body was supposed to be returned with the Bibas children on Thursday. However, the body that Hamas returned was found not to be a match for Shiri Bibas, according to the Institute of Forensic Medicine. The military identified Oded Lifshitz, who was among the 4 slain return hostages on Thursday, before confirming the identities of Ariel and Kfir Bibas. The body that was posing as the remains of Shiri Bibas in a coffin locked and sent with keys that did not match was an anonymous woman. Experts attempted to perform DNA matches to the other Israeli hostages held in Gaza, also finding no match. The return of a random body, not Shiri Bibas, violates the agreement that brought the bodies back, officials said. They added that returning the proper bodies was obligated under the hostage ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. So breaking into the story and looking into the story, it was just absolutely infuriating. I was in tears at most points just thinking about these 2 children. But Hamas did eventually turn over the body of Shiri Bibas after they initially pulled a fast one. A lot of people think they did this to just further the pain in this situation, to further the pain of the Bibas family, and to further the pain of the people in Israel, because Shiri's husband and Ariel and Kfir's father, Yarden Bibas, he was also taken captive by Hamas, but he was released by Hamas, and reportedly Hamas told him that his family was still alive. Those absolute savages, those demonic pieces of garbage, told him that his family was alive, even though they had murdered his wife and 2 children, not long after that they were kidnapped, right? So Yarden, when he was released, had to be told by Israeli officials that his entire family had in fact been murdered, and they had been murdered like 2 years prior, right? But there are a couple of things that get lost in this story. The first part is what the abduction of Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir looked like. So here's some video that was taken when they were kidnapped. So, and again, just a reminder, we have video of these atrocities because these Hamas demons were wearing a bunch of GoPros during the 10/7 attacks so that they could post all this later so that they could recruit more people. So let's go ahead and go to the video here.
مش عندهم ما حدا حيصيبها عشان تعرف ان الانسانيه عندنا ايوه استروها وخلوها لما تاخذوها حيه اعرفوا خليها تعرف معها اطفال نعم يا ريت بحكي
So obviously just an absolutely terrible, horrific scenario. The fear on the mother's eyes, and of course the kids just have no idea. It's just absolutely infuriating. But also there's the spectacle that Hamas made of the return of the murdered and mutilated bodies of Shiri, Ariel, and Kfir. Again, even though initially they did not give up Shiri's body. So let's just actually go to that video here. So that should be blood-curdling, but let me point out some things about the video just in case you missed it or in case you're just listening to the audio. The party nature. There's music and celebration going on. Again, this is Hamas and a bunch of Palestinian civilians, right, that are also pro-Hamas, right? Remember that they voted Hamas into power, and if they held another election today, they would vote them back into power because they like what Hamas does, and they participated in the things that went down. Okay. Also, let's point out the technology that was used to record all of this. Because we're being told that these are just poor, destitute Palestinians with $2,000 Canon cameras with $1,000 lenses and drones with cameras on it. These poor, destitute Palestinians, they don't even have food or water. Anybody still believe that? Because they had all this technology and they had the PA system and all that type of stuff so that they could create content. They're content creators, right? Because they want to create other little jihadists around the globe and they want people to come and be a part of their cause. And again, I kind of alluded to this a second ago. I want to point out the celebration of the so-called civilians here, these civilians. Well, actually, more on that in just a second. I'll go to my big takeaways, actually. First big takeaway is as it pertains to Hamas, kill every last one of them. I don't see an argument to the contrary that makes any sense. Kill every last one of them. Kill them like dogs. And if you're a Christian, pray for them. Pray that they accept Christ before you blow their heads off. Okay? But let's go to the point that I've been kind of delaying here a little bit. The line, because this is delicate, but we have to delve into this stuff. The line between official Hamas fighters and Palestinian civilians is essentially non-existent. Because a lot of those videos, and guys, I watched a bunch of them. Okay? Probably shouldn't have, but I did. There were a bunch of Palestinian civilians that were taking part in these Hamas atrocities on October the 7th. These Palestinian civilians are the ones holding the hostages. These Palestinian civilians, in a lot of cases, are offering up their children to be human shields for the official Hamas fighters. I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember from memory, so I'll correct the record later, but the Bebas family, I think they were taken by civilians, right? If not, they were at least paraded around by the civilians. And so is it true that there are Palestinian civilians that are anti-Hamas, anti-jihad, anti all those things, and in fact, some even being Christians? Yes. I actually know for a fact that there are Palestinian Christians that feel absolutely stuck and don't know exactly what to do. But that is an incredibly small number of people, okay? An incredibly small number. And this is what I'm talking about. When you're fighting against groups like Hamas, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Boko Haram, Muslim Brotherhood, all these different groups that we've talked about, it's not just killing the people, it's the ideology. And the ideology doesn't go away because Islam doesn't go away. It's deeply, deeply problematic. So when you have leftist media, or when you have your liberal friends trying to tell you about the plight of the Palestinian people, remember and realize a lot of them cheered and participated in what went down on 10/7. They want every single Jew to die. They want from the river to the sea to be a reality. They want every Westerner to die. That's us. They want all of us dead. They want all Christians in the world to be killed. That's who these people are. That's their worldview. It's not a worldview that just goes away by wishing and hoping. All right, next quick hitter here. All U.S. Senate Democrats voting against a bill that would keep males from competing in female sports. So this is according to Daily Wire on March the 3rd. On Monday, Democrats in the GOP-led Senate blocked legislation that aims to protect women's sports leagues and schools by trying to keep male athletes who identify as females from competing. By a 51-45 vote, a motion to invoke cloture on Senator Tommy Tuberville's Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act failed. A 3/5 majority, or 60 votes, was needed to cap debate and proceed to a final vote for passage sometime in the future. Senate Democrats just blocked the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. Every Senate Republican supported it. Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso of Wyoming said in a post on X, Americans agree men should not compete against women in sports. Democrats are out of touch on this common sense issue. The bill says it aims to provide that for the purposes of determining compliance with Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 in athletics, sex shall be recognized based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. So I'll go right to my big takeaway on this one. The Democrats have made their bed on this issue, and now they have to die in it, right? I know the expression is they make their bed and they have to lie in it. No, they have to die in it now because they've picked this hill to die on, which is, I don't know if it's a gift. I don't know what it's more of. Is it a gift or is it just absolutely flat out flabbergasting that they would pick this issue to die on? Because Americans don't agree on anything. There are very, very few issues that are bigger than like a 60-40 split. This is an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans think this is insanity. They see a video of a male running in a female track race, and they're like, this is crazy. If that was my daughter, I'd run out there and pull him by his stupid ponytail and get him off the track. Same thing in volleyball and in basketball and all those types of things. It's basic fairness. You don't need to be a biologist, Ketanji Brown Jackson. You don't need to be like some sort of savant when it comes to politics and policy and those types of things. It's just basic fairness. Boys generally are better at sports than girls are across the board. So there's a reason we have girls' sports, because they would not be able to compete with the boys. So we have to keep the boys out of their sports so that there's some level of fairness. This is not that hard of an issue. But the thing with the Democrats is they can't back down now. Okay? You have Gavin Newsom, governor of California. He's trying to split the baby right now, saying, oh, yeah, because of fairness, we can't do that. But then he's also saying that girls can become boys and vice versa, right? And you have even prominent figures like, Joe Rogan on his show will castigate people that believe that men should compete in women's sports. But then he's completely fine with adults being quote unquote trans, as if that's an actual category, as if somebody could actually be born in the wrong body, which is not an actual thing either. But for Democrats, they can't get away from this. Now, things could change on a dime. Remember about a year ago, looked like Democrats were going to, have the White House again, take the House, and keep the Senate. And now they've lost all three, right? They've lost the legislative branch and the executive branch. They're still trying to work through the courts, but this is a major issue for them. But if they don't change on stuff like this and fast, people are going to wake up and be like, these Democrats are absolutely insane. And, for the sake of Republicans and conservatism writ large, I hope they keep pushing. All right, next one here, a narcissistic gay couple having trouble getting their designer babies back to the UK. So this is according to the New York Post on March the 2nd. A gay couple spent $107,000 to have twins in Cyprus via surrogate, but are now stuck in the country. Damien, 33, and Pasan Fernando, 36, had always dreamed of starting a family and began their journey 6 years ago. The couple struggled to find a surrogate in the UK and decided to look into other options abroad instead. Through a recommendation, they found World Center of Baby in Cyprus. Pasan's sperm was used to fertilize a donor's egg, which they chose to best fit Damien's features before the couple were paired with a surrogate. They found out their surrogate was pregnant with twins in April of 2024 and flew out to Cyprus on New Year's Eve ready for the birth. River and Liko were born on January the 3rd, 2025, but the parents have been unable to get them home to St. Albans, Hertfordshire for the past 8 weeks. They applied for their passports on January the 13th of 2025 when they had all the documents required, but say their application is still waiting to be reviewed after several documents were mislaid. Damien, the head of maths, said this passport issue is incredibly frustrating. It's silly human errors. It's so avoidable. The children aren't able to meet their grandparents. Okay? So this article I'll stop reading there. It just goes on and on and on from there. And the tone of the article is supposed to make us feel really, really bad for these two narcissistic homosexuals that they're being mildly inconvenienced while trying to get, smuggle their designer babies back to the UK. I mean, poor guys. You can't just say life's hard, get a helmet, because this is a terrible tragedy, you see, right? These guys just can't get what they want all the time. So I actually, I'll rapid fire kind of go through some stuff that I've said a bunch of times on this show, and then I'll go to my big takeaway because I've said this stuff and I've said a lot of this lately. Gay surrogacy should be banned, and it's satanic. This idea that two men can rent the womb of an image bearer of God to have that baby ripped away from them after they give birth is absolutely horrific, and it should be banned worldwide. Also, this is only possible because of IVF. Go back to episode 720 of the show if you want to get all mad at me about the IVF stuff, because again, people try to get mad and cancel me over the IVF stuff. This is not possible without that, because that's what they're doing. They're taking an egg and they're taking one of these homo sperm and they're mixing it up and they're putting it in the rented womb of a woman. Okay? This was always going to be a downstream consequence. All right? And again, this is always going to be the outcome of the the legalization and technological improvements in the surrogacy and IVF spaces. Okay? because these are designer kids, again, because they wanted to match this one with the perfect surrogate and the perfect features of this person. And we'll use this guy's sperm because he's actually a little bit taller and can run faster and did better on his ACT. Like, it's that level of stuff. And these are babies, designer babies that are being made outside of God's design and outside of the male-female conjugal union, which was given to humanity as a gift so that we would continue to procreate, so that we would be fruitful and multiply, so that we would fill the earth with children that we would raise up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, right? Now, I just became aware within the last week of a gal named Katie Faust. She's absolutely incredible. She runs an organization called Them Before Us, and she's, basically a children's rights advocate. She was recently on the Jordan Peterson podcast. I think it was, last Thursday or Friday, so you guys can check it out. And she said that surrogacy, especially gay surrogacy, removes 3 kinds of mothers from the life of the child that's created. Okay, so this is important. Number 1, it removes genetic mother, okay, because there's an egg donor, right? They provide the egg and they contribute half of the child's genetic makeup. So gay surrogacy takes genetic mother out of the equation. Secondly, it takes out birth mother. Okay, so that's the surrogate. So they carry the baby, they bond with the child, they deliver the child, and they establish that prenatal and postnatal bond, and then they're immediately ripped away. And the third kind of mother is social mother. So this is the mother that raises the child post-birth and acts as the primary maternal figure during those core early time periods as the baby's, trying to live and be socialized. Okay? So this isn't just weird. It's not just icky. It's theft, right? Because all these videos of these women that they literally give birth and the nurse takes this baby and walks it over to the next room where these 2 gay dudes are sitting in a hospital bed like they just got through, delivering a baby, and they just get handed this baby. They just had to give over a little bit of money, right? It's absolutely horrific. So I'll go to my big takeaway on this one, which is going to seem like a hard left turn, but here we go. Send it. Isn't it so interesting that gay couples seem to prefer baby boys as opposed to baby girls? I'll say that again. Because when you see these videos online and when you look at the numbers, the majority of these gay couples prefer to have baby boys as opposed to baby girls. Why do you think that is? I mean, if you really think about it, you don't have to think for very long. If you listen to people that are from the gay community, again, I don't like using that language about an entire group of people that are, disparate people of all kinds of different backgrounds, but people that choose to act out in a homosexual manner, a lot of people in that community openly talk about pedophilic relationships. They talk about older gay men and younger gay boys, right? Preteens, teenagers, those types of people. And they talk about how that's very, very normal in the gay community, along with just random sex with random dudes, because you have 2 dudes with the sex drive of dudes doing each other, and there's no morality in the entire situation anyway, because it's an abomination. But man, when you think about these babies and you want to keep things like IVF available, and if you're going to have IVF for straight Christian couples, and we got to have it offered for gay dudes because we don't want to take things away from them, right? Look at some of the downstream consequences we're going to have. Okay? All these things are connected. All right, next one here. All right. A public school psychology teacher in Waurika, Oklahoma, making their students fill out a survey about their thoughts on different sex acts. So this is according to Lane Brown on Twitter from March the 4th. He wrote this: a teacher at Waurika High School in Oklahoma had students fill this out for a psychology class. This is what they teach your kids. So real quick, before I get to what the psychology teacher did, Waurika, Oklahoma is a town of less than 2,000 people. It's a very, very small town. Okay, it's in South Central Oklahoma. It's about an hour's drive, actually, from my hometown of Lawton, Oklahoma. Waurika High School has about 100 students from grades 9 through 12. Okay, this is a tiny school. Okay, and yet the sexual revolution mind virus has been able to penetrate even this small town. Okay, so I'm now going to read for you the entirety of this handout that was given to the students in their psychology class. And so we'll take a second for that to get up on the screen here. So I'm just going to go read this to you for those of you that are not watching this on YouTube. I promise I'll do my best to read it perfectly. Handout Master 15.2, Activities and Demonstrations. Is this normal? Please rate whether or not each of the following activities represents normal sexual behavior by placing a Y for yes or an N for no on the blank. 1. Watching X-rated movies several times a week. 2. Having sex with more than one person at the same time. 3. Preferring oral sex over intercourse. 4, having intercourse with a member of the same sex. 5, fantasizing about having sex with a member of the same sex. 6, fantasizing about a person other than one's partner during sexual intercourse. 7, masturbating in front of a partner. 8, having sex somewhere other than a bed, like the floor, shower, kitchen, or outdoors. 9, never engaging in masturbation. 10, becoming excited by exposing oneself in public. 11, being celibate. 12, being unable to achieve orgasm. 13, enjoying being physically restrained during sex, bondage. 14, becoming aroused by voyeurism, that's peeping toms. 15, playing with food, fruit and whipped cream during sex. 16, dressing in the clothing of the other sex. 17, preferring that one's partner initiates sex. 18, inflicting pain during sex. 19, receiving pain during sex. 20, using sex toys like a vibrator during sex. 21, having rape fantasies. 22, masturbating after marriage. 23, not being aroused by a nude member of the other sex. 24, being aroused by receiving an obscene phone call. 25, being aroused by making an obscene phone call. 26, engaging in sex with animals. 27, deriving sexual pleasure from seeing or touching dead bodies. 28, becoming aroused by being urinated on. 29, becoming aroused by soiling the clothing of the other sex. And 30, becoming aroused by viewing or touching feces. Now, almost immediately, the official Twitter account for the Oklahoma State Department of Education responded to this post by saying this matter has been flagged for review. Thank you. Now, of course, people immediately thought that this was a made-up story, right? And that was until Lane Brown provided a copy of a letter that was sent home by the Waurika Public Schools to parents, okay? So this is the parents' letter. Let's go ahead and get that up on the screen here. Okay, I'll read the parents' letter here. Parents and stockholders, on Monday, March the 3rd, 2025, Waurika Public School Administration was made aware of a form that was sent out to our high school psychology class. This form was taken from state-approved psychology curriculum. The content of this form was inappropriate for students and should have never been dispersed. The curriculum was removed from class, and all parents of that class were notified by Monday, March the 3rd of 2025. Waurika Public Schools will continue to hold our students and our staff members to the highest of expectations. Respectfully, Cody Simmons, Superintendent of Waurika Public Schools. Okay? So, I mean, I don't mean to laugh because this obviously isn't funny, because some pervert, education person decided that this needed to be discussed in a high school classroom with a bunch of minors. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it was probably somebody with pedophilic tendencies, right? They just absolutely needed this to be a part of the approved curriculum, which means this saw multiple people's eyes before it saw the eyes of these high school students in Waurika, Oklahoma. So here's my big takeaway. Stop me if you've heard this before. We have two options for educating our children. 1, vetted private Christian school. 2, homeschool, with a small caveat, maybe some charter schools. Do you guys, again, I say vetted private Christian school because just because they have a cross in the lobby, it could be Episcopal school for all we know, and like they've got, a lesbian person, teaching, algebra. But if it's a vetted private Christian school that holds to actual biblical values, you're not going to see this assignment in a psych class. And if you homeschool your kids, there's no way you'll do it because you're normal. You're not a pedophilic, crazy person that wants to get your rocks off to this kinky answers to these kinky questionnaires that are being just sent out to random schools. And guys, if it's happening in Waurika, Oklahoma, deep in the southern part of the deepest red state in the entire union, what do you think about your particular school system? Because every time I talk about this, I get an angry email from a teacher or someone that has their kid, and they're like, look, I know my school's principal, and they're a Christian, and they pray with all the other staff members, and they pray with the kids, and like this isn't going to happen. Guys, really? Are you that naive? You think that this couldn't possibly happen in your school? Because I bet you the parents in Waurika, Oklahoma were waking up this semester thinking to themselves, I just got to go to work. I got to go take care of business, right? My kids aren't going to be exposed to this filth inside the classroom. And yet here we are. So again, vetted private Christian school and homeschool. Everything else is rolling the dice. To repeat Vodi Bakum, you can't send your kids to the Roman schools and expect not to get back Romans, right? So you're sending a kid. So if these are not your values, if these are your values, great, you're loving this. This is like your favorite thing in the entire world, right? But if these are not your values, you're going up against thousands of hours that these kids are spending under the tutelage of people that are teaching this garbage, this satanic filth. So if your kids come out crazy on the back end, that's kind of your fault, mom and dad. So think about it. All right, last one here, the colossal idiocy of former pastor Rick Warren. So out of nowhere, former big-time pastor Rick Warren, who sold 1 billion books, decided to tweet this on February the 11th. John 19:18. They crucified Jesus with 2 others, one on the side, on each side, and Jesus in the middle. The guys on both sides were thieves. If you're looking for the hashtag real Jesus, not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations, you'll find him in the middle, not on either side. Now, guys, I just got to tell you right from the beginning, I thought this was a parody. Like, I immediately looked to the top of the post and I was like, okay, this has to be Babylon B or something like that. And then I saw that it was Rick Warren. I'm like, okay, maybe it's a parody account of Rick Warren. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is his actual blue check marked account. This guy actually thought this was a good idea. Again, I'll just read it. John 19:18, they crucified Jesus with 2 others, one on each side and Jesus in the middle. The guys on both sides were thieves. If you're looking for the hashtag real Jesus, not a caricature disfigured by partisan motivations, you'll find him in the middle, not on either side. So there are a lot of issues with this. Here's just a few. Well, first, nobody was asking for a quasi-Christian political take from Rick Warren. Like the day he put this out, nobody was asking him for him to comment on a story. Nobody wanted his opinion on anything. He just thought this, went and found a picture of Jesus on the cross with thieves on either side of him, and then just posted it. He thought it, he typed it out, and then he just posted it, right? So major unforced error, okay? Also, the point of Jesus on the middle cross, so maybe someone should tell Rick Warren this. I don't know what kind of seminary he went to, but the point of Jesus on the middle cross in between one person that accepts him and the other one that rejects him has nothing at all to do with modern political left and right politics. Because because only if you've had part of your brain melted away could you possibly think that Jesus on the cross was making a political statement between donkeys and elephants. Like, he has to know that, right? Like, he really does have to know that. But after intense backlash, okay, because he got absolutely dragged for this. I forget what it's called whenever you get more comments than you do likes or shares or whatever. Oh, getting ratioed, right? So he got major, like big time ratioed. So he actually did delete the tweet, and then he posted this tweet. I apologize. I wrote poorly. I don't believe Jesus was a centrist. He stands far above it all. My kingdom is not of this world, John 18:36. Jesus demands our total allegiance as the center of our lives. Okay, now you might read that and be tempted to give Rick Warren a break. Okay, as I was. When I first saw that he had apologized, I was like, oh, okay, we got some humility here. But then I quickly remembered that if that post had gotten tens of thousands of likes and a bunch of shares and a bunch of positive comments with people agreeing with him, and if he got a bunch of invitations to go on left-wing podcasts and got invited to go speak to The View and got another interview with Oprah and all those types of things, he never would have taken it down. He would have stood tall with his chest out, right? So the apology is fairly lackluster. I hope he does regret it, but it seems like he kind of told us exactly what he thought and didn't really think twice about people not really agreeing with his take. So my big takeaway on this one is not everything is political. I know, guys, on this show we talk about faith, culture, politics, and some people have complained about some times in some episodes where it's all political. Well, guys, I'm not going to only play where you think I should play. Okay, I cover faith, culture, and politics, not necessarily in that order all the time, not necessarily a third. And if you want to see it done differently, guess what? Go buy a microphone, buy a camera, plug it all in, create some notes, and talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about. No one's stopping you. That's why there's over 6.5 million podcasts in existence, because the barrier to entry is basically non-existent. Okay, so if you don't like the way I do it whichever way you do it. But not everything is political. And of all the people on the planet that should understand that, it should be pastors, okay? Now, there are a lot of issues with Rick Warren. Megan Basham talked about him a lot in Shepherds for Sale and different things like that. Or not a whole lot, but she did talk about him in Shepherds for Sale. There are some issues with Rick Warren. But this is like basic stuff. But this is all downstream consequences of Trump derangement syndrome, of people that just couldn't believe a guy like Trump was elected and then elected again. And, you know, they're trying to seem moderate to all their liberal buddies, even though the liberal people are just going to castigate them and throw them to the side anyway, kind of like the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It's like, hey, let's use all the moronic college students to push this revolution, and then we're just going to chop all their heads off at the end of the day. This is just one of those situations where he tried to get some bona fides. He tried to get some attaboys and a pat on the tushy from all the leftists on Twitter, and it just blew up on his face. So, sucks to be you, but maybe think twice next time. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. But before we go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Don't forget, we are giving away this incredible half-face blades knife. Again, go donate to Undaunted.Life. Make sure you put knife in the donation note. Okay, you put knife in the donation note. Every $25 gets you an entry into that raffle, and every $1,000 that's donated, you're going to go ahead and get a fixed blade from Half-Face Blades. Also, our Dominion program, that's our coaching program. We are still taking applications for that, even though right now we've got nothing but a wait list, but we are going to be taking applications for that. We got more information on that here soon. And then also check out the Church of 1122 Men's Conference coming up in October. And then I've got all the links to everything I talked about at the beginning of the show and also the quick hitters. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.